on and talk about sleep. And the reason is sleep is a huge player in the immune system. Okay. There are a lot of different types of immune cells, and there is one type that's called natural killer cells, NK cells. These are a part of the immune system that are largely responsible, one of the parts of the immune system, for killing viruses. So, and we have very strong data that sleep deprivation depletes these natural killer cells, sometimes up to 70%. And that's not necessarily like pulling an all-nighter. That's like a 5 to 6 hour night could deplete natural killer cells up to 70%. So I think it's important now more than ever to be getting good sleep, but also given all that's going on and the stress from all that's going on, it may be harder now more than ever to get good sleep. So I want to reiterate, I've spoken with a lot of you about this before. There's a system to treat insomnia called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And, you know, I have studied this system and kind of distilled down the key tenets of it. And I have a handout that I've given to some of you on this. I'm happy to provide it to anybody who wants it. But we're going to go through all that today, because so much of getting a good night's sleep is behavioral and just doing these little behaviors and being consistent doing them every night. So I want to head through this list. So the first thing I have up here is schedule. So going to bed, waking up at roughly the same time every night. Doesn't have to be exact, but you know, say you go to bed between 10 and 10:30, you wake up between 6 and 6:30. Okay, that's something we want to keep relatively consistent. Okay, and that's one of the most important factors for circadian timing, kind of keeping our body clock synced. Okay, exercise is another key thing, and we're going to cover that in depth probably next week. But exercise is another key thing for sleep. But definitely not exercising right before bed. So earlier in the day exercise, so exercising in the morning or even in the afternoon, even to the late afternoon, is going to, from what we know, have a beneficial effect on sleep. Certainly anybody who's ever done a long hike or a long bike ride knows that, you know, you sleep pretty good that night. And so exercise is an important thing here, but we don't want to exercise right before bed because that will raise our body temperature and make it harder to get to sleep. Caffeine is kind of there is definitely a lot of personalization with caffeine. So some people really break down caffeine quickly. And so in some individuals, the half-life of caffeine is only 3 or 4 hours, or even less. So they can break it down extremely quickly. In some people, the half-life is like 6 to 8 hours, you know, or even longer. So in general, caffeine early, you know, when your cutoff is going to vary person by person. You know, if you really want to be on the safe side, a 12-hour cutoff is probably the best way to go about making sure the caffeine's not going to have a detrimental effect on sleep. So if you go to bed at 10, you cut it off by 10 a.m. Some people can do noon, some people can do 1, some people can do 2, but playing around with that window, I think can be useful. And if you have a sleep tracker, that can be a useful way to know as well, by kind of playing around with when you have that and how it affects your sleep. So alcohol is another one. So certainly alcohol is, it's not quite, the half-life is much shorter. It stays around in your body for much shorter periods of time. So alcohol in general is usually, we're looking at about a 3 to 4 hour cutoff from sleep for most people, but I've had some patients who it has to be 5 hours. Some people can cut off 2 hours before bed. It doesn't seem to affect their sleep, you know, much at all. So this will vary quite a bit person to person. 3 to 4 hours is going to be your best bet. Also, kind of along that same line, making sure that you're avoiding eating too late. So when people eat too late, it actually keeps your body temperature up because you're digesting food. And what we know is that the body temperature has to fall about 2 or 3 degrees in order to get into a deep restful sleep. So 3 hours is kind of a objective measure that we say. So making sure you don't eat 3 hours within 3 hours of bed. Some people may benefit from more. Some people may be a little less. But 3 hours is a good number to start with. Avoiding medications that disrupt sleep is a big one too. Because especially I see people, do things like Benadryl, NyQuil, so any of the sedating antihistamines, and that's a fairly common practice for some people to help with sleep. So I would definitely recommend against that. Really, although there are some medications that have less of an effect than other medications, benzodiazepines and things, so things like Xanax, and the Z drugs, so Zolpidem, which is Ambien and Lunesta, those seem to be the worst. On the other side of the spectrum, we have things like Trazodone, which don't seem to be too bad. But then probably midway through, more even to the worst side of things like Benadryl. So we want to avoid sleep disrupting medication if we can. And there's a long list of those. And certainly I try to review that in every person's visit. And in general, I like people to know, what is your risk of being on this medication? If sleep is one of those risks, then I try to bring that up to people. But the main ones are things like NyQuil, Benadryl, that kind of stuff, because they're over the counter, they're easy to get, and people oftentimes take them. Now, I'll have some recommendations at the end of some safe things you can take to help with sleep. If you continue to, once you're implementing all these things, you continue to have sleep issues. Avoiding napping after 3 p.m., kind of self-explanatory, but basically it interrupts your sleep inertia. So, you build up sleep inertia throughout the course of the day, and this is through something called adenosine, and we kind of lower that sleep inertia when we take a nap. Not a big deal if it's in the early afternoon, but if it's too late, say after 3 p.m., that can disrupt you from getting to sleep that night. So we don't want to do that. Wind down an hour before bed. I think I've spoken with almost all my patients about this. Doing something relaxing. If it's watching TV or something like that, I think that's fine. Just make sure that you're, wearing blue blocker glasses or something like that, or you're doing something to block that blue light. But in general, doing something relaxing during that hour before bed is going to be your best bet. That's a great time to meditate or do breathing or prayer, or any of these things that are going to bring down the nervous system. Taking a hot bath or shower before bed could be helpful. Actually, when you heat up briefly in the bath or shower, what happens is your skin, the blood vessels in your skin will dilate, bring more blood to the surface of your skin, and the ultimate effect is that your body cools quicker. So it actually will help cool your body. It's a little counterintuitive, but a hot shower or a hot bath before bed, or even something like the sauna would be a good option, because it's going to help ultimately cool you down. The sleep environment, so dark, cold bedroom. So yeah, we want no light. I tell people you shouldn't see your hand in front of your face. It should be that dark. So blackout blinds, whatever it takes to get your room dark. Certainly we don't want any LED lights. We don't want TVs on or other screens. And in general, we want the bedroom to be cool. The science has looked at this. It tends to be the colder, the better, but somewhere between 65 and 70 degrees seems to be optimal for most people. This is certainly, for any of you who are using the chili pad, this is also, the great thing about the chili pad, especially as warmer temperatures start to, creep up more and more. The chili pad will circulate that nice cool liquid below your mattress or below your sheet, and kind of keep you cool throughout the night. Daylight in the morning, again, kind of a counterintuitive one, because we talked about winding down before bed. And, of course, the other thing that goes with that winding down that I didn't mention is making sure that we're bringing the lights down, light shades, in the yellow, orange, and red spectrum at night are best. But in the morning, it's opposite. We want bright light. We want blue light. And so that is going to be important for kind of timing your circadian rhythm. So when you get that bright morning light exposure, you know, it kind of tells your body, okay, you know, 12 to 16 hours from now, we need to start getting tired and go to sleep. So it kind of just keeps your body clock time. The last one, again, super counterintuitive, but don't lie in bed awake. So if you lie there for 15 or 20 minutes, you're not falling asleep, do not continue to lie there. This also kind of goes closely with clock watching, which I never recommend that people have a clock for this exact reason. But if it's felt like you've been laying there for a while and it's been 15 or 20 minutes, you want to get out of bed, go someplace else. It can be in the same room. If you have a chair in your bedroom or something, you go over there, or it can be to a different room. Do something relaxing, do some meditation, guided imagery, breath work, read a book, like a regular book, like not a Kindle or an iPad. You know, do something like that to relax yourself. When you get tired, go back to bed. Okay. That can be a tough one for people.